Donald Trump will be in a federal courtroom in Miami next week facing 37 charges. They include willful retention of national defense information, conspiracy to obstruct justice, corruptly concealing documents, and making false statements and representations. These were top secret documents taken from the White House after Trump left office. Donald Trump is the first ever former president to face federal criminal charges.
The crimes he's accused of have stiffer penalties than in years past. It's thanks to the former president's signature. But former federal prosecutors say that is just one of several eyebrow-raising parts of the case. CBS News Miami's Larry Seward is in downtown with more.
The Department of Justice indictment against former President Donald Trump.
I was actually taken aback by it.
Dropped details former federal prosecutor Chris Lomax thought he'd never see.
The fact that there are allegations that former President Trump instructed people on his team to not comply with the requests from the federal government to turn over these documents, that seemed to be pretty serious.
The indictment claims the former president took boxes of classified documents to Mar-a-Lago without authority. The document claims the former president showed a removal plan to a writer, a publisher, and 2 staff members at his golf club in New Jersey. Prosecutors also claim he told the same people, quote, "This is still a secret." In another case, the indictment says Trump showed a classified map related to a military operation to a representative of his Political Action Committee. The 37-count indictment accuses former President Trump of unlawful retention of national defense information, obstruction, conspiracy, and false statements. 5 years ago, then President Trump signed legislation increasing penalties for concealing documents to 5 years in prison.
He's facing a lengthy penalty. Some of the charges that he's been, that were included in the indictment are, I think, facing up to 20 years of imprisonment. So that may be actually one of the smaller things that he's looking at.
They come after me because now we're leading in the polls again by a lot, against Biden and against the Republicans by a lot.
Trump began fundraising off the indictment.
Looking at it realistically, this is not a complicated case.
Another former federal prosecutor, David Weinstein, said a trial about who took what document, how, and who got in the way could wrap up in 6 months. But legal challenges could drag on for more than a year. Based on the charges, Lomax sounds convinced prosecutors have layers of evidence to prove their case.
At the end of the day, if something falls through the cracks in terms of evidence, you have a backup plan. And I expect that, the government here has done that as well as it ever has, because the whole world is going to be watching.
Between now and Tuesday, Lomax said there will be negotiations between prosecutors, Trump's legal team, and potentially a federal judge over conditions of the former president's bond and how much that might cost. In downtown Miami, Larry Seward, CBS News, Miami.
And here is a look at photographs from court filings showing boxes of documents throughout Mar-a-Lago. There were stacks of them in a public ballroom, a bathroom, under a water pipe, and on a storage room floor.
Prosecutors say some of the documents were marked top secret, some relating to nuclear weapons capabilities of the U.S. and its adversaries, as well as sensitive U.S. military planning.
The indictment quotes an alleged conversation between former President Trump and his lawyer saying, quote, "Wouldn't it be better if we just told them we don't have anything here?" and suggesting that his attorney hide or destroy documents that were demanded by subpoena.
Well, tonight, former President Trump took to his social media platform, Truth Social, posting, quote, "Hillary Clinton deleted 33,000 emails, many of them classified, and nobody did anything about it. I did nothing wrong and got criminally charged."
In a surprising move earlier today, the former president spent much of his day on the golf course and was joined by a very familiar face. Florida Congressman Carlos Gimenez played a few rounds with Trump and shared this picture of the two of them together on Twitter. Before taking office in Congress, Gimenez served as mayor of Miami-Dade County.